Yes, I'm still here, Hollywood. And coming up on today's episode... And there's another thing that was kind of funny to me in the documentary about going into the water when it was really cold and wearing a Speedo. Yeah. Something about shrinkage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was real, man. That was real.
But you took care of that.
The water's like 60 degrees. And it's cold. It's freezing. Everything's cold. And, I'm standing there with a Speedo and like trying to do the scene. And I'm like, oh my God, this is just not going to work. So I was like, all right, just give me 5 minutes here, right? And then I just grab a towel or one of these warming jackets and just kind of go in the corner on the boat, just kind of put a little teepee around myself and do a little self-fluffing. And sure enough, you get some circulation back. And like I said in the documentary, you get to represent yourself a lot better. But it does talk about how Baywatch in general influenced pop culture in the 90s and
all over the world.
Yeah, all over the world, and how literally 1.1 billion people were tuning in weekly, and at the time there were only 5.6 billion people on the planet. So that's a lot of people.
Is it true Tommy Lee didn't particularly care for you?
Pam and I were shooting a kissing scene at the ocean's edge, and the extra, one of them had shot it, and Tommy was sitting at home that night, and basically the tagline was like, meet Pamela's new boyfriend. This is like my introduction to my character, and here they are making out on the shore of Baywatch, and he went ballistic. And the next day I'm walking down to the set and I'm walking past her trailer and I just hear all this, like, it sounded like someone was in there with a construction crew and he was in there just, renovating her trailer with like his fists.
California is famous for many things: movies, TV, stars, and of course our beaches and tiny red bathing suits. There was one show made it a requirement to run on the beaches, and not just run, but run in slow motion, with maybe a little bounce along the way. This is Still Here Hollywood. I'm Steve Kmetko. Join me with today's guest from the cast of the most popular show in TV history, David Chokachi, from the global hit Baywatch. If you'd like to be more involved with us at Still Here Hollywood, you definitely can. Just visit patreon.com/stillherehollywood. You can support us for as little as $3 a month. Then you can see who our upcoming guests will be and submit questions for them. You can even tell us what stars you want us to have on as guests. You'll also get exclusive behind-the-scenes info, pics, video, and more. Again, that's patreon.com/stillherehollywood. Hi, David. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, sure. We want to know what's happened to you over the years. What have you been doing lately?
Well, a little bit of everything. Life has been really good. I have a daughter who's 12, about to turn 13. She actually just started in 7th grade. And my wife has always been a corporate executive at a fashion brand, which required a lot of travel. So I pretty much raised her kind of up until, I don't even know, but she left the company about a year ago. And so for the majority of the time, it was like her and I. And then now that my wife's formed a consulting company, it's more like a family unit again, which is, at first it was a little bit like jarring because I'm like, whoa, we're used to doing it our way. Now you're home. What's going on? But it's been actually just an absolute blessing because, for a daughter to have her mom around, especially as my daughter's going through that, she's in puberty, and
good luck with that.
Yeah, I know. So at least she has, my wife's around. She can talk about like female issues with her if she's not comfortable talking about with me, even though I'm like the coolest dad. I feel like I'm like an open book, and things have been good. We've been doing this Baywatch documentary after Baywatch Moment in the Sun, which is streaming on Hulu, and we started that in 2019, and then COVID hit, and Nicole Eggert and this guy Matt Felker collaborated, and then Nicole kind of had she kind of just drifted a little bit, and Matt ran with it and put his own money into it, put a lot of his own money into it, and just it kept evolving, and he just kind of kept going with it. And I mean, we were shooting stuff up until probably 3 months ago, and it released on August 28th. Like, so they were continually adding little pieces, and I kept saying yes to like everything because a lot of it was ocean related and fun stuff. So it's been a really cool resurgence because ABC News Studio put a ton, like $1 million into marketing or something, and we went to the TCAs in Pasadena in July, like 8 of us cast members, and a bunch of them I haven't seen in years, and it was amazing. Usually, I mean, you've been there, right, to the TCAs, and usually it's like they're vicious, and out of the entire day, it was all positivity except one woman went for one jugular moment and she got stuffed. And it was awesome to see her get stuffed because she was so hoping to just like hook this actress on this topic, and she got shut down, and it was beautiful. But there's been so much press that's come out about it, and really positive press, you know, because I don't know if you've had a chance to see it, but it's each episode's a little bit different, but it does talk about how Baywatch in general influenced pop culture in the 90s and
all over the world.
Yeah, all over the world, and how literally 1.1 billion people were tuning in weekly, and at the time there were only 5.6 billion people on the planet. So that's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people. I remember the first time I covered the Oscars, I think the catchphrase was "1 billion people are watching." You top that every week.
Yeah, exactly. Is
it true Tommy Lee didn't particularly care for you?
Yeah, Tommy, what's up, dude? Well, you know, there was an incident. So back in the day when we were shooting the show, you know, they could only police tape off so much area when we shot at Santa Monica at Will Rogers State Beach.
Right.
And that was back in the day when there was like extra and inside edition, and those camera crews would roll up, and you know, they'd just stand behind the police line and they could zoom in and shoot. If we're shooting, and we were shooting, Pam and I were shooting a kissing scene at the ocean's edge, and the extra, one of them had shot it, and Tommy was sitting at home that night, and basically the tagline was like, "Meet Pamela's new boyfriend. This is like my introduction to my character." And here they are making out on the shore of Baywatch, and he went ballistic. And the next day, I'm walking down to the set, and I'm walking past her trailer, and I just hear all this, like, it sounded like someone was in there with a construction crew demolish, like, and he was in there just, you know, renovating her trailer with like his fists. He was not happy, and he had threatened the producers, and he basically, you know, said, if you write another kissing scene with David Chokachi, I'm going to do this to you. And it, unfortunately, it put a lot of stress on Pam, and I saw it, and I was really like, I was just being a straight up friend to her. There was no ulterior motive for me. I was like, and that's the thing that bummed me out, is like I was never looking to like press this relationship, because the reason we work so well, Pam and I, was more like because we're very kindred spirits, but almost like not brother and sister, but we just were very self-deprecating. We loved to like, we were just fun together, you know, but we weren't like looking to ever like
hook up.
Yeah, no, I wasn't that kind of guy, and I definitely wouldn't do that to a woman who's married, and especially a woman who's married to Tommy Lee.
Well, you know, she's also, I got to tell you, one year she was at the Cannes Film Festival promoting her movie Barbed Wire, I think it was called.
Yeah.
Hordes of people would just surround her when she was on the beach, when she was on the pier. There was no getting away from it.
Yeah.
And I felt kind of bad for her. But,
yeah.
You know.
I mean, when we were shooting the show, they would be hiding, like, they would like crawl under the grip trucks and hide there, just trying to get a shot of her without makeup or doing something. It was insane. Like the paparazzi pressure, and then this other pressure. And then the crazy thing is, we ended up going out to dinner a couple months later. It was like Pam and Tommy, Yasmin, myself, a buddy of mine, and I forget who Yasmin was with at the time, but a small group of us went out to dinner. We ended up like partying together, and Tommy and my buddy and I go up and we're having like shots together, and he was like the coolest dude in the world, and it was like nothing had ever happened, and I'm like, so I don't know. I was like, I get it. I get it. In the moment, he was probably just like, this is, but you got to realize, and the producer's like, we can't just stop writing this. This is what the show is about. And it's not like a movie. It never goes beyond kissing, it's like, come on, man. She's an actress and that's part of the deal,
Well, and she's also a dude magnet.
She is a dude magnet and she's pretty awesome. Yeah.
And there's another thing that was kind of funny to me in the documentary about going into the water when it was really cold and wearing a Speedo. Yeah. Something about shrinkage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was real, man. That was real.
But you took care of that.
I took care of it. I discovered I was very smart. Like, we would shoot these scenes. So because my character was an Olympic hopeful, a lot of times they'd put me in a Speedo. It'd be 6 in the morning or 6:30 in the morning in June, and we're a mile offshore. It's foggy. The water's like 60 degrees, and it's cold. It's freezing. Everything's cold, and I'm in there for an hour at least while they're just doing like all these shots with the follow along boat. And then you have to get out of the water into a boat and do a scene with, it would be Alexander Paul, who's like kind of my swim coach, and I'm standing there with a Speedo and like trying to do the scene, and I'm like, oh my God, this is just not gonna work. Like there's just like my balls are up in my stomach, and there's just, so I was like, all right, just give me 5 minutes here, right? And then I just grab a towel or one of these warming jackets and just kind of go in the corner on the boat and just kind of put a little teepee around myself and do a little self-fluffing, and sure enough, you get some circulation back, and like I said in the documentary, you get to represent yourself a lot better.
Good to go.
Yeah, baby.
I had a friend who used to say, when he was troubled by shrinkage, he would say, any smaller, I'll have a vagina, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah.
I hope it's not sexist.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be. Anyway, what about Yasmin? You just mentioned her.
Yeah.
How's she doing?
I haven't been. Some people are in touch with her. I know she's doing fantastic. Her life, I think, she's married and super happy, and I know she's sober and doing great. They tried to reach out to her to see if she would do the documentary, but she really didn't want to go back into the public spotlight really at all. So she basically just declined, which is kind of too bad. She was such a huge part of the show, and she's such an amazing human being. And I know she's like everybody. I mean, what you realize, I think, and not just in the entertainment business, but in life in general, if you live long enough, you're going to go through shit. You're going to go through lots of highs, but there's also going to be lots of lows. And some of those lows can be all kinds of various things that can either last a long time, and it's up to you. You got to find ways to battle your way out. Just like I battled my way out with this whole thing with my leg and my basically darkness. And I don't fault her for anything. It's just people get, they fall in with the wrong crowd, and then the next thing you can't see your way out of it. And I've had times in my life when I was probably not taking care of myself that well, and I was single, and we would be like, when you're an actor and if you're not working, it's like, hey, it's Tuesday night, you want to go shoot pool, and we're all drinking beers and shooting pool, and then you go look to go do something else, but it's Tuesday night and most people are in bed. Like then especially once I had a daughter and a child, and I was like, all that stopped, and I don't do anything anymore. I take care of myself. I'm like in fitness and getting up super early.
We'll be back for more in a moment. Do you think Baywatch hindered your career at all?
I think, initially when it hindered all of our careers, there was a certain stigma against all of us. We were shooting a medium of entertainment. We never said we were doing Shakespeare on the beach. We were doing Baywatch.
Was it great really getting together with everybody again? How long had it been?
I mean, a bunch of us see each other on pretty much on the regular. Hasselhoff kind of is spending more time over in Europe because he's married to his wife is from Wales, I believe. So I used to see him a lot, and we used to plan these really cool. We're both like adrenaline guys. We're still planning on doing this diving trip off South Africa, and hopefully that happens.
Watch out for sharks.
That's what we're hoping to go see. And there's this really cool thing. It's what's it called? I can't remember, but it's like a big like run with all these fish migrate, and you get in the water with them, and it's like supposedly like just amazing. But I see like Alexander Paul and Jason Simmons and Jeremy Jackson and Pam. We don't see that much. She used to live in Malibu, and now she's back up in Vancouver Island, I'm pretty sure. And
yeah, I was watching a documentary with her at her new home.
Yeah,
which is way off the beaten track.
Yeah,
I guess you get enough of that publicity stuff.
Yeah, and you go back to nature, which in nature, as I've learned recently, can be super healing. So I don't blame her. It's probably a lot of peace and a lot of just happiness. But we've all stayed in relatively close touch because there's been various reunions, and there's also a potential reboot happening at Fox, which we'll see if happens. But it's been fun. The documentary, the coolest part was not forcing us, but we just by proximity of like they would double up interviews and would see each other, and that part was amazing. And I got to see like Mike Newman. Do you remember Mike from the show at all? Newmy. He was the 6'5", like Iron Man, just beast, and he unfortunately is going through pretty debilitating Parkinson's. And to see that's been heartbreaking because he was the one before I even got on the show, and I think E.T. covered it. I have like the clip, and it's so funny. Like, I'm so young, and the water's freezing, and it's great down at Santa Monica, and he's like, all right, man, this is what you got to do. You got to like take the can, do this, run in, dive over the waves, dolphin. And, I was like, let's go. And I did it. But he was the guy who like did all the training for me to lead up to shooting. And he was just awesome. And anytime he and I, because I grew up on the East Coast in Massachusetts on the water, and my mom was a sailor. So she had us literally sailing at age 5 on, and she was like, no bullshit. Like, we were fortunate enough, we lived right on the water in a harbor, but we'd have to sail from where our dock was down to the race, do the race, and sail home. And like sometimes the races were at 6 a.m, and it's blowing like 20 knots, and the boat's like ready to flip, and she's like, get in that boat and get down. I don't care. There's no excuses. Like, you're doing that race. And it built character. And I ended up really going, I ran with that a lot. I ended up teaching sailing. I competed. I raced 420s, which are a 2-man boat, which are really fast. Went to the junior nationals in those multiple times. I raced windsurfers, triangle racing, and went to the Junior Olympics in that. So I knew how to drive boats really well. I was a certified scuba diver. I knew CPR. I was on a swim team. All these skills when I came to an audition time for Baywatch, and part of the audition was a swim test. They were like, wow, this is the guy, and my character happened to be also an Olympic hopeful swimmer. So you had to be an actor who could also swim and look legit. But getting back to my point, like, so I had the skills to be able to drive like the Scarab, which is like the big yellow long speedboat, which is, goes really fast, but it's very hard to maneuver in close. And so they would let me or knew me drive it like up against like the Venice Pier. They'd be like, go full speed and then, kind of bank it as close as you can. And they would anytime there was a rescue and it was Numi and I, it was like, I knew it was going to be a fun day because he's so skilled, and I trust him 1,000,000%, and I knew he would look badass, and we would just like kick ass all day. If it was me and someone who wasn't so great in the water or with the jet skis, because even like riding a jet ski, if the camera is right there, and they're saying like pull the ski up and turn it right away, and then deliver your lines here, it's people who have never ridden a jet ski, it's very difficult to do. Like, and I could do it on a dime, just like precision, and other
It's
people,
a gift.
yeah. So those skills add up, so once they saw the skill level set that I had, they're like, oh my god, we can write tons of shit for this guy, like action, like beyond belief, because he can do it all, and we don't need a stunt double. And so it was kind of this, the more skills you had, the more fit you were, the more you worked, and with your acting coach, which I did every night, and I trained in the gym every night. Like, I just was in this mentality of discipline, and they would put you in more episodes. You became more popular. You made more money, and Baywatch was a big believer. They did not want to pay. They didn't pay you well. They paid Hasselhoff and Pamela very well, but they didn't pay anyone else. But they believed you could make your money off the show, doing appearances or whatever, and that was true. But you had to pop out of the cast in order to kind of be that. And luckily I did, and my
I'd
work
say
ethic,
so.
my work ethic paid off. Yeah.
You said you were raised on the East Coast?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going back a second.
Yeah.
You look like you should have Made in California tattooed on your forehead
know.
or something.
I know. I used to go out in bars in Boston before I even moved to California, and they're like, "What part of California are you from?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm from Plymouth, Mass, bro." I just had to shed the accent because my mom still has a wicked Cape Cod accent.
Yeah.
It's gnarly.
Had you gotten out of shape at all when they started shooting this doc?
Not
Can you still fit into the Speedos?
I can. I mean, I went through a rough stretch. In August of 21, I was shooting a movie back east. I'll keep this short, but I ended up, and it was a buddy of mine's movie, and it was a Lifetime movie. I'm playing a cop. The whole thing is me talking, except about 3/8 of a page is action. And I chase I have to hit a mark, see a bad guy in a hallway in a hospital, and then sprint after him. And it was 1 a.m, and it was really humid, and I'm in these like combat boots and police uniform, and we did it once, and everybody's like, "Cut, let's go home, we're all tired." And someone yells, "Oh, we're set up for it, let's do it one more time." And we do it one more time, and I go to sprint, and I ruptured my Achilles. And then cut to, I stayed because I was like, I just put a boot on, and I owed them one more day. I was like, I'll just finish it. Cut to a year later, my foot is like loose, and it was not surgically repaired correctly, and I'm like, something's wrong. And I went and saw 3 specialists, and 2 guys did not even want to like deal with it. They were just like, that's very complicated to go back in there. Multiple things could go wrong. One guy I met in Pasadena was like, yeah, unfortunately, the original surgeon did not do it correctly. It's too long, and no amount of PT. There's nothing in the world you could do to create that tensile strength again. So he does a shortening where you start the whole process over. They sever the Achilles, and he cut out like that much. So it was that off, and then he reattaches. But then you're back on the couch, no weight for 6, on your leg at all for 6 weeks, and that period of the second surgery, even though I was excited to hopefully have a better foot, I just went into a darkness that I've never experienced in my life.
Really?
And yeah, it was brutal because my entire life I grew up playing sports. My mom was like, "You're never going to be in trouble because I'm going to keep you so busy in sports, you won't have time to be in trouble." And I played football, wrestled, and lacrosse all through high school, and then I played college football and lacrosse and in college, and then fitness has always been just a way of my life, and continued to always like trail running and surfing and weightlifting and yoga and all these things. And then so for the first year of the Achilles, you can't do anything for almost 3 months you can start using your upper body. But it feels, you're just weak. And then, so I never even fully recovered. And then the second time you're starting all over again. So my body went through this horrible, just atrophy. And then mentally not being able to get those endorphins that kind of keep me very mentally balanced and also just happy. That's my happy place, especially being in the ocean and surfing is like one of the best things for me, and it feeds my soul, and I'm always like, and so that I couldn't do that for 2 years, and I just found myself in this place where I was just like, my soul was dead, and I was zero fun to be around. I was unmotivated. I was just like, trying to put on a good face for my family as much as I could, but they knew, like, even my daughter knew, but she was strong enough to like kind of fight through, and eventually it just, it took a long time, and then I just, by us going back out to Malibu, we always go out usually the beginning of this summer because she starts her junior lifeguard program. But we had moved into this house that our friends gave up, and it's like a small L-shaped ranch, but it has a big backyard and a pool, and so we put in an ice plunge and a sauna, and all of a sudden I was like in nature all the time. I was ice plunging 3 times a day using the sauna. I was all of a sudden exercising, and then these elements started to just trigger something, and I just like sparked. And like something inside of me just like did a complete 180, and like I went from like being, during that dark period, I was like sleeping late and not wanting, like, just, everything was an effort. Like, I didn't want to go to the gym. I didn't want to do shit because I had done so much PT on the leg, and when you're doing Achilles PT, it's monotonous beyond belief. I mean, you're doing sitting here with a band over and over and over 1,000 times, heel raises, and that's just for your foot.
Great shoes.
Yeah, and like you're not even doing the rest of your body, so you at least have to spend an hour per day on just that, and then if you have time, try and exercise the rest of your body.
And it never feels like you're doing anything.
No,
like you're accomplishing anything.
No, it feels like I'm just going backwards. So
right.
Luckily, with this transition that happened, by just logistically and being in nature, all of a sudden I started ocean swimming, and I was just like, because it's still not right, but I stopped letting it consume my life. I'm like, I finally realized, like, oh my God, life is flying by. My daughter's growing up, and I'm not being a great influence because I'm not that fun to be around. So, and I knew that was happening in the moment, but when the flip happened, I was like, whoa, this is how it's supposed to be, and the weird thing is, I feel like even emotionally, spiritually, and physically, like better than before the injury, which is weird because I never would have guessed, even though there's a lot, and I have some nerve damage in my toes, but even though it still requires a lot of maintenance and work, and I'm still grinding on it now really hard to try and get it back. What I learned through that process, and when you go through something like that, and I know you've been through some tough things in your life, but when you're tested and you pull yourself out, and
I usually fail.
Yeah. Well, I failed multiple times.
They're not tests you can study for.
No, these are like life and death tests.
Right.
But when I kind of pulled myself out, it was basically me doing it too, by tapping into what used to work, and then realizing, and it really started with like the cold plunging. That started triggering something, and I started to feel my spirit come back, and then I just eventually snowballed and started like cold plunge, sauna, nutrition, fitness, exposure to sunlight, watching sunrise every possible day I can. Like now I'm up at 4 a.m. just so I can like stretch, get everything done, And if I'm not driving my daughter to school, I take my dog to the beach and I make sure I'm down there for sunrise, just because there's a really positive impact on our circadian rhythm by watching the sunrise. And it does all these amazing things for our bodies.
Okay. Wait a second.
Yeah.
I need to ask questions here.
Okay, go.
What kind of dog?
Okay, well, his name's Trooper. Yeah, he's a year and a half rescue. I'll show you a picture. He looks kind of like a cross between a German Shepherd, excuse me, German Shepherd, maybe a little rot, maybe a little hard to describe. He's beautiful, but he was like kind of crazy. And I've been involved with Best Friends Animal Society for a long time, since 2000, and we've always rescued or adopted. And but this one we kind of got pretty quickly, because it's hard to find a young dog that doesn't have trauma. So we didn't want to adopt a 1-year-old that already has this history. So he came up, and we kind of, my daughter was like, "Oh my God, this is a dog." And then we find out he's got a little bit of, he's very protective, but I held a lot of, it was just frustrating dealing with him until I got him one of those e-collars. And then now I use that, and it's like, now I love the dog, because it's not like, before I'd take him to the beach, he'd eat a lobster shell right in front of me. I couldn't catch him. And I'm like, dude, you're going to die. And I'm not even going to feel bad, because we've only had you for this long and you're suicidal. And he's eating seaweed, and he's barking at people and scaring them. And now with the collar, I just click it, call his name, and he recalls and stops the behavior. And it just makes it way better, and it's a much better routine. And
Rescues are the best.
Oh,
I have 2 right now.
Do you?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. Buddy and Sophie.
Nice.
You clearly were influenced by your mother.
Yes.
What about your father? I hope I'm not going somewhere I shouldn't.
No. My dad has been passed away. I hope I don't get this wrong. Probably 16 years.
Oh my, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he was 11 years older than my mom. Very interesting story, which most people don't know. He was born in Baghdad, Iraq, which you would never guess by looking at me. But he was,
The name a little.
yeah, Chokachi. Yeah, exactly. And he was light-skinned, blue eyes, which is rare over there. So visually and physically, he did not fit in. So all of a sudden, they're like, when he was growing up there, it was a very different time. And when you don't visually fit in, they think something's off here, like the culture. And this is with Saddam and his sons running the show. And my dad had a voice on him, and he was very outspoken against Saddam and the whole regime, and to the point where he ended up like in jail for a night. His dad got him out, and his dad basically said, "You cannot be doing this shit. They're gonna come and grab you in the middle of the night. They call it disappearing you. We won't even know, and we'll never see you again. We'll never know what happened to you, and you're not safe here. We have to get you like out of here. You've like, you're on their list." So his dad somehow scrounged up. They came from dirt, and his dad scrounged up enough money to put him on a boat. He immigrated through Ellis Island. He wanted to become a doctor. He had very small connections in the United States, but managed to put himself through medical school. Long story short, ended up working at Boston University. Met my mom he was doing his internship at Wellesley College, and she was in nursing school, and ended up becoming a emergency room doctor in Plymouth, Massachusetts, where I grew up, and eventually became chief of surgery down at that hospital, and total success story.
Great.
Amazing dad, but he did not know how to relate to us as kids. His idea of relating to us was, okay, boys, there's work to be done around the yard. And this would be, when we're like in between like 8th grade and high school, like, we want to go to the beach with our buddies or go water skiing or do something. And he's like, you boys aren't going anywhere. There's work to be done. And that's how it is. And we'd be so fucking mad, my brother and I would be like, well, what is it? Just give us a list. He's like, no. Start by doing this, weed the garden, and it would go on and on and on until like 4:00. And sometimes buddies would come over and help for an hour, and they're like, dude, we're out of here. This isn't, you guys are stuck. in the end, you know what? It taught us work ethic, and myself, my brother, and my sister have like gnarly work ethic. Like I can outwork most people. I also I have a carpentry background, and I work construction for a long time, and I just could outwork guys, and they're like, holy shit, dude! Like, so he taught us a lot of things. They were kind of unspoken things, and they weren't the kind of like tender and like, hey, yeah, come on, son, I love you kind of things. But you know, they were lessons, and they paid off in life. And you know, he was an amazing. He was the kind of doctor. Like when he had office hours, there'd be a line of people in his office because he would sit in there and want to know their story, really what's going on with them. Like he didn't rush people out of there. He was in there he's really to help them with their medicine or whatever he could do, but also to talk to them and like get to know them. And his patients loved him, and that was cool.
David, I notice you have a tattoo. I don't remember seeing that in Baywatch.
No, this one was new. This one was weird. This one came from my subconscious. So it's random, Steve. All right. So for like a year, I was driving my daughter to school. They have those Crayola markers that you draw on windows. These markers are really good for kind of like experimenting with like drawings on your arms. And then I took it into this tattoo artist, and he was like, I'm not sure. And then he ended up doing it. And I just was like, he's like, I think I got it. And he went with it. But anyway, if you look at it from this angle, if you cut it off there, it looks kind of like roots into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
If you flip it the other way, it looks like a tree growing up.
Right.
And then also from my angle, from my POV, it's like an estuary where an ocean meets a river meets kind of land when you see those beautiful like estuaries in the Amazon.
Right.
So it was a very weird thing because it was nothing I had visually seen, but it kept coming up in my subconscious, and I kept drawing it, and I just went with it. And then I just like anytime I have time, I kind of just like, it's almost a form of like meditation or mindfulness. You know what I mean? I can just use it like that.
Wow. We'll be back in a moment. You were on People Magazine's 50 Most Beautiful People.
It's weird. It's like being a part of that 50 Most Beautiful issue follows you around like a calling card. Like it opens doors.
Who were you closest with on in the cast?
Probably Alexander Paul and Jason Simmons and Jeremy Jackson. You know, when Jeremy went through, I'm sure you know, a pretty rough phase in his life, and he had reached out for some help, and he was actually in prison. And Alexander called me, and she was like, "Did you hear what happened?" And Jeremy was in I think they call them the Twin Towers downtown. Which, which is not a good place to be. She's like, "Do you want to go visit him and give him some?" I was like, "Absolutely, hell yes, let's go." And we went down and visited him, and when they brought him in and we're sitting across from the glass, and he's in his jumpsuit, and he started crying, and we were like crying, like just it was just really hard to see, because the kid and he's completely turned his life around. He's become basically a guru, like to really helping people. He does these men's retreats. He offers free breathwork classes. He's sober. He's super fit. He's all into fitness and nutrition. And I'm really, and just speaks from like his heart. There's no filter on him. And it's really beautiful to see. But to see him in that setting, man, I was like, my heart just was like almost broken. It was just like, because you could see he was petrified, and he had no idea what was.
Who wouldn't be?
Yeah, that's not a good place to be. But,
there was talk about them doing a reboot.
Yes, yeah, and there still is. So it's a very strange situation. CBS was going to do a reboot right before the Dwayne Johnson and Zac Efron movie came out, and it was going to be Baywatch or Magnum PI, and they were leaning towards Baywatch, and I was really close to it. And I even went on location scout with him. And then the movie came out, and the movie was kind of funny, I guess, but it did nothing for Baywatch except hurt the brand, because they could have been astronauts, they could have been anything. It had nothing to do with lifeguarding. It was just like it just didn't make sense. So CBS was like, we can't. Nobody's gonna touch. Everybody was like, we can't touch this thing for 2 years. And I'm in touch with this one producer, one of the creators, Greg Bonan, and I've always, for 10 years, I've been like, why aren't you guys rebooting it? Because once that phase started, every show from the 90s that rebooted worked. And I'm like, and then this happened, and then there was a big, they were like, we can't do anything now for 2 years. And then now they had, they realized, I think during COVID and then increasingly after COVID, internationally, people started watching Baywatch again. And Fremantle, who owns the owns the Baywatch rights, noticed this huge uptick in international viewing around the world. So they basically triggered this idea to, okay, let's move forward with a reboot, and it ended up at Fox. The problem with that is Fox already has a lifeguarding show that John Wells developed called High Rescue, that's already in production, and it's shooting on the North Shore of Hawaii, and they're putting a lot of money into it. I think it's gonna premiere after the Super Bowl. So I even asked Greg, I'm like, is this like death to the reboot, or he's like, it could be really good, or it could be really bad. Who knows? But I don't know. I don't know if Fox if a network's really going to run 2 lifeguarding shows. And it seems like John Wells has been pretty outspoken that he doesn't want his show to be compared to Baywatch, but unfortunately he's doing a show about lifeguarding, and we were doing it.
You set the standard.
Yeah, come on, dude.
Are you worried at all about the time that's passing? I mean, you look fantastic. You haven't aged a second. But Hollywood is a weird place when it comes to being a little long in the tooth.
It is, but I get a lot of my happiness from outside of work, and I think that's really important. I don't. When I was younger, I used to really chase it, and I was very tied to it, and it will probably to so much to the point that it wasn't healthy. So if I auditioned for something and I was close and it went well and I didn't get it, I'd be very like, it wouldn't derail me. But now it's like, I just don't give a fuck, man. At the end of the day, my goal is to get on another series, because on a series you have, not only do you have kind of guaranteed work, but you're working with the same actors. Your work inevitably becomes better because you get into a rhythm of, okay, this is, you're doing this for 6 or 8 months, and you have that time to really grow as a crew and a cast. Whereas a movie, it's whatever, it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a couple months, whatever. It's in and out, and you don't have that time to kind of grow. So that's my kind of my wish. And I even for the Baywatch reboot, I'm like, I would go back and do it. And I wrote this cool story arc of where my character's been, how you could bring him back, and they're like, they love it, but there's a new showrunner who's running it, and she has creative control, so it's like up to her, So we'll see. But I don't, Do you
think Baywatch hindered your career at all?
I think, initially when it hindered all of our careers, because when I tried to audition for things while I was during hiatuses, and a lot back in the day, remember there were like movie of the weeks that they would pump out, or whatever it was.
After school specials.
Yeah, there was a certain stigma against all of us, and they didn't even care. They didn't see your tape. They don't even know you, but if they just saw that you were in the cast of Baywatch, they'd either say, no, we're not bringing in that actor because nobody on Baywatch can act. Or if you went in, it was like double the pressure, because now they know you're on Baywatch and they're looking for one slip up or one moment of, oh, he doesn't get it, to just go ahead and reaffirm their bias. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you had to go in so prepared, and not fall into the trap of feeling pressured, even though you are, because it's a very awkward situation. And it was just an unfair bias because I always, and I continue to say, we were shooting a medium of entertainment. We never said we were doing Shakespeare on the beach. We were doing Baywatch. And it was...
I like that. Maybe they should make
a
show about that, Shakespeare on the beach.
And it's like, you could stick an Oscar-winning actor into any of our roles with the lines and the situation, and it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be Baywatch. And they're going to get the same feedback as we were getting. It's just, it wasn't us. It was just but I was happy to represent because it was like, you know what? We entertained billions of people around the world. And also our names became recognizable around the world. And a lot of the financing that comes from movies or future television shows comes from your worldwide name recognition.
And at one time it was
biggest show in the world, the most watched TV show in the world. We're in the Guinness Book of World Records, and it's a cast photo that I'm in, and I'm like, it's badass, dude. So it did for a while, but I persevered, and I ended up getting another series called Witchblade, which was an amazing TV show that was probably the best written thing I've ever done, that we shot in Toronto based on a comic book. This guy, Ralph Hemmicker, was the showrunner and writer, director, Unreal TV show. I ended up getting another TV series called Beyond the Break. That was, I played a surf coach that we shot in Hawaii of a female surf team, which was super fun, on Oahu on the west side of Makaha. And I'm still working. I'm about to start a movie with this director who's 72 and has just overcome a gnarly surgical error and regained his health, and we're about to restart on the 23rd. We're rehearsing this week, and it's called Married Alive. It's a really cool script, probably the best one he's written. Another friend of mine's doing a movie called Daddy Issues. It's like a female version of Swingers, and I'm doing kind of this really funny cameo on Tuesday for her movie. And so it's like I've just like, once I've switched gears, when I kind of came out of that whole thing, and I've like opened myself back up to the universe and been more like just way more engaged in life in general and everything, like things started to fall in place. And I'm producing with this guy for this movie Married Alive, and I helped because he was ready to throw in the towel. He was so frustrated because a couple of the actors were just not committing, and a couple of the crew guys were kind of like, they weren't committing, and I talked him off the ledge, and I'm like, dude, you survived this gnarly situation because you were meant to direct this script, this movie, and here we are. We're like, and now he's got more vigor and more excitement about life than I've ever seen, and he's so fired up. So, yeah.
What was the scariest thing that ever happened on the show?
On Baywatch?
Yeah.
Man, that probably. So we had to do. They brought over these Australians, okay, who are these? They're called Uncle Toby's. Is like it's kind of like a circuit of lifeguard racing that they do in Australia. It's like the best, and Australian lifeguards are the best in the world. They're badass beyond belief. I mean, they're like legendary for everything they do. So we had this storyline where they come over, and one of them happened to used to date Pam back in the day, and they brought over like the best and the most charismatic guys to do this episode where we kind of butt heads with one of them, but we kind of compete against each other throughout the show. And one part of the episode was they decide, okay, we're going to do a night swim with these Australians and Chokachi. And it was at Huntington Pier, and it was at night, and the water was freezing, and the surf was huge. And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. Just put some Vaseline under your armpits and your groin. It'll keep the heat in. That's the trick. And all the Aussies, they don't give a shit, dude. They do not give a shit. So when and this happens in real life, when you're doing any kind of lifeguard racing, it's very aggressive. it's kind of water polo technique. They'll pull your leg, they'll swim over the top of you, they'll push your head down, they'll do anything and kind of to get by you and also to like kind of leave you in the dust. And even though we're shooting this and they know I'm like the star of the show, these guys were literally trying to kill me and drown me. And I just remember I'm like, I don't even know if I can make it out to this buoy at the end of this pier and back in through the surf. Like, I mean, it was the real deal. That was probably the hardest thing I had to do. The rest was gravy, man. All the action stuff was so fun. I crushed that stuff.
And we'll be right back. Is there anything you miss about the Baywatch days?
Yeah, man. It's working on the beach, reflecting back. I mean, granted, the writing was the writing, right? And some episodes were better than others. Some were not good. And I never am one to talk shit about that show. A lot of the actors love to rip it. I do not rip it. I think it's the best thing. I was made for that show, and I loved every minute of it. But I miss going, like, showing up there early in the morning and being on the beach, especially the part where we had two units. A first unit, which was all the dialogue and the scene work, and second unit was all the action and the montages, like the slow-mo running. And the second unit was always like a fun day. You knew you were going to be, it was a day of like, you were going to exercise all day, whether it was like, they would be running or training or ocean swimming, or it'd be like a Pamela and I montage of just like running on the beach, her like kind of training me, us like shooting hoops, us making out. But those days, and then also like second unit meant like a lot of days would go over to Catalina and shoot a lot of scuba diving stuff, which was so fun, or driving the speedboats or the jet skis. So that stuff like I was just like in heaven.
You were on People Magazine's 50 Most Beautiful People.
Yeah.
What was that like?
That was cool, man. I was, I don't know if it's still a big deal today. I think it is, but back then it was like a huge deal, and I was so stoked to be a part of it. The shoot was really fun. I forget the photographer's name, but we shot it out in Malibu, and it was like Tom Cruise was on the cover, and I had this great photo on the inside, and it's weird. It's like being a part of that 50 Most Beautiful issue follows you around like a calling card. Like, it opens doors. Like, it would get me into like restaurants when they said like, sorry, we have no tables available, or sorry, we can't let you into this place because the lines. It's insane. And to this day, people reference it almost in every interview, and it's like, so it's a cool thing. I mean, I don't tote it around like, oh my God, I like the beautiful people in the world, but being a part of it, it's definitely it was a neat thing.
What's the weirdest thing a fan? You must get swarmed still by fans, maybe not to the degree you did when the show was on. But what's the weirdest thing a fan has ever asked you for?
For the most part, it's always been very positive, like really positive. Like, I just got something. They went to Surfrider Foundation because I do a lot with them, but it was from someone in Slovakia. Like, and they're so happy to like be able to, like, they found an address where they could contact me, and they put their own postage on it. And I love responding to those people because, Eastern European countries are, they don't have a lot to, especially wintertime. It's dark, it's gloomy. It's crazy. Like 2 4th of July's ago, I'm sitting next to this woman, this beautiful Russian woman, and I was just talking with her, and I end up talking with her. She's like, I don't know if I should say this, but you're Cody from Baywatch, aren't you? And I was like, yeah. How do you know? And she's like, well, I used to watch you. And I was like, well, where'd you grow up? She's like, I grew up in Siberia. I'm like, well, what part of Siberia?
You're big in Siberia.
Describe this to me. She goes, picture your most remote town in the coldest, darkest place in the world, and that's where I grew up. And we were obsessed with Baywatch. And now she's like a hugely successful photographer in LA and a new mom and everything. But the reach that Baywatch has, like, globally, is shocking. I mean, absolutely mind-blowing. One more story. Like last year, my in-laws, my wife's parents, took us to the Galapagos on a National Geographic,
Cool.
one of the boats, and there's naturalists and guides who are on the ship with you, and it's such a great experience. Like being in the Galapagos and being with these guides who are so knowledgeable, it feels like you're going back in time. Like things are untouched. The animals they're absolutely unafraid of you because there's no human pressure on them. Their only pressure is from natural predators. So we're down there and we're going ashore one day, and the guy has a red rescue can, and I'm asking him like, hey man, what's for the red rescue can? He's like, oh, we call it Pamela. I'm like, no way, dude. And I end up telling him, I'm like, I was on Baywatch. And he's like, wait, what? I thought I might have known you. And then so we went out, like started talking about it. I posted it on my Instagram, but. So there's a picture of us in the Galapagos. Like they literally call their red rescue buoys anytime they go ashore, Pamela. And there's this great picture of me and the guides with like the red rescue buoy. And so the global reach, and I've experienced in other really remote parts of the world, it's like unfathomable. It's just really wild. I don't think there's another show or a movie or that in the history of TV and film that has penetrated places that are so remote and been successful. It's mind-blowing.
David, we're out of time.
What? Come on, I got so much more to tell you.
I'm
dude.
sure you do. You are a good talker.
Thank you. This was awesome.
I had a good time too.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad you came.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Good luck with whatever comes next.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Still Here Hollywood is a production of the Still Here Network. All things technical run by Justin Zangerly. Theme music by Brian Sanashin. And executive producer is Jim Lichtenstein.